Aloha mai kako. My name is Terry George. I'm president and CEO of the Harold Castle Foundation. And today I'd like to share with you our 20-year learning journey here at the foundation in helping to restore nearshore marine life populations in the main Hawaiian Islands so that future generations can benefit and learn from this rich natural resource. I'd like to show you some of the successes we've had, the mistakes we've made, the strategies we've used, and the assumptions and passions that drove our work. And we start with the story of Harold Kainalu Longcastle, owner of Kaneohe Ranch and grandson of one of the early missionary families to Hawaii. Harold created this foundation in 1962, providing much of his wealth to endow the organization with a corpus now worth about $185 million. He was born in Waikiki, right on the ocean, in 1886, and died in Kailua, right on the ocean, in 1967. One day, Harold Castle's grandson, J.B. McIntosh, a longtime board member of the foundation, told me that Harold had false front teeth. Turns out Harold, like many Kama'aina fishers, had a years-long habit of holding onto his view box with his front teeth while poking squid in the reef flats, and the rocking in the waves loosened his teeth so much that they fell out. So when and why did we choose to focus on our nearshore fisheries? Well, in 2002, when Mitch Dolier took over as president and CEO of the foundation, he's now the board chair, 4 of our 5 board members had each been fishing, diving, and surfing in the islands for 50 or 60 years. And they were alarmed at the estimated 75% decline in nearshore fish stocks over the past century. Mitch proposed to our board to get proactive in restoring nearshore marine ecosystems. The board readily agreed, and then I was hired to make it happen. Now, the first thing I did was gather a bunch of people into our office who lived and breathed this work to get a handle on the causes of the dramatic decline in fisheries health in our main Hawaiian Islands. What I learned is that Hawaii is a very challenging place to implement effective marine conservation. Here are some of the main issues I heard from the people gathered in our office. Our state has extensive coastal development. We have channelized streams that act as expressways for mud and pollution during heavy rain events. And we've got alien invasive algae choking a lot of our coral reefs. We also have overly efficient fishing gear, such as monofilament leg gill nets. Finally, and perhaps the most damaging of all, in the 20th century, we've replaced the highly effective local konohiki management system with a woefully underfunded State Department of Land and Natural Resources charged with caring for 3 million acres of marine waters, but with only 1% of the state government budget. In addition, we are seeing intensifying conflict among resource users and a desire for easy, simple solutions to what is a very hard and complex problem. For example, fishers often feel targeted and marginalized by these issues as extractive end users, and who can blame them? Intensively fishing a heavily degraded reef probably isn't a good idea, but stopping fishing altogether on those reefs won't bring the nearshore areas back to health. I then went to the Makawa home of Johnny Baldwin, a board member, grandson of Harold Castle, and certainly the most experienced fisherman on our board. I needed Johnny's advice to get this started right. His hands were sandpaper rough after a lifetime of working his land and running a commercial fishing operation. He brought me over to a big map of the Hawaiian Islands on his wall, and with his finger traced along the coastline of each island and named from memory each longtime fishing family that I should consult. For this area, Terry, see the Lindsays. For this other one, see the Linds. For this one, go see Uncle so-and-so. So what I learned, and this is one of our main takeaways, is that the Harold Castle Foundation believes in the wisdom and power of longtime fishing families because this foundation was founded by a longtime fishing family. We believe that the right to take is not as strong as the responsibility to take care. We also believe most fishers believe the same thing. And we believe in place-based management, like the old Konohiki system, management that is community-led, government-authorized, and nonprofit and science-supported. And we remain strongly pro-fishing. The vast majority of fishers are the best allies we could hope to have because they know the reefs and bays intimately. We just want fishing to be sustainable so that future generations could fish also. Now, it just so happened that just a year or two before we made this commitment to get proactive in nearshore fishing, longtime fishing families from 13 communities around the state had gathered together on Molokai to see how they can support each other and restore balance to nearshore areas. Here's a picture of them, including Uncle Walter Paulo and the dark sunglasses from Miloli'i, who taught youth how to palu the waters for traditional opelu fishing. There's also Uncle Henry Chang Wo from Eva, a limu restoration expert, and Uncle Mac Poi Poi from Ho'olehua, who has led the restoration of pono fishing practices at Mo'omomi, just to name a few. These kupuna have worked together to promote the idea of community co-managed fishing areas, and they began to form voluntary organizations to create management plans and get the state to approve them. These people also influence well-meaning conservationists to change their view of conservation from closing off spaces from people to protecting spaces with and for people's active and sustainable use. They have a name for this, Lavaia Pono, or fish pono. And frankly, I found that the scientific evidence showed that fish pono works. Research on reef fish stocks in dozens of bays over time showed that fish abundance, shown in the vertical axis here, was just as high in areas of customary stewardship, such as Mo'omomi, as they were in areas that had formal legislated no-take status, such as Hanauma Bay. Here at the foundation, we thought this was great because we felt that community co-management would be much easier to establish than no-take marine protected areas and would allow fishing to continue while protecting fish spawning areas and seasons. So with approval from our board, advice from longtime fishers, and scientific evidence to guide us, off I went to craft a grant-making strategy and start moving forward. First, though, I had to deal with a big, thick proposal that was already on my desk. It was a proposal from the Nature Conservancy, or TNC for short, that focused only on aquarium reef fish. So I went to TNC and asked, why focus on aquarium reef fish only? They said, well, I thought that was what you guys wanted to fund. I told them, let's just throw this proposal away and have you draft a proposal that lays out what TNC thinks are the most important things to work on. And while you're at it, write me a memo telling me what the Harold K. Casa Foundation should be funding and thinking about. So TNC did exactly that, and we funded the new proposal. Over the next 7 years, we became Hawaii's single largest philanthropic funder of nearshore resiliency by far. We started building the field, helping to establish or expand key intermediary organizations, such as KUA, the Nature Conservancy, Conservation International, which had never worked in U.S. territories before, and UHC Grant. We partnered with the UH Law School to create positions for legal fellows at the State Division of Aquatic Resources, or DAR for short. And we helped DAR and community networks to establish Makai watch groups, sort of like neighborhood watch groups for the ocean. We helped the enforcement arm of DLNR, called DoCare, to create a standalone marine enforcement unit on Maui. And we got the federal NOAA to commit substantial dollars to match our own, to create a small grants fund at the Hawaii Community Foundation that helps dozens of communities get the money they need for equipment and logistics to rebuild fish pond walls, remove mangroves, and repair stream sites. But you know what? I believe that we also stumbled badly in ways that eroded trust with many fishers. When we funded policy and communications work that led to bans of monofilament lay gill nets, we thought we'd won a great victory against one of the most obviously damaging types of fishing equipment. But it was a Pyrrhic victory. Stung by this new lay gill net policy and by the establishment by President George W. Bush of the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument in the vast northwestern Hawaiian Islands, a number of politically influential fishers rallied together to stop certain other efforts to improve nearshore management, including some community-based subsistence fishing areas. I guess I didn't spend enough time working to rebuild that trust, nor, because of IRS rules that prevent private foundations from lobbying, nor did I work the halls of the state legislature enough to present alternative views to legislators. Still, a 5-year evaluation showed that even without strong enforcement, the new gillnet rules did actually help fishers. They improved fish catch per unit effort in those areas where the nets were completely banned because fish were able to grow beyond the juvenile stage. So in 2011, we were able to really ramp up our oceans work with the hiring of Eric Coe as our full-time program officer after a long career at NOAA and the Nature Conservancy. Eric developed a much more comprehensive grant-making strategy for the foundation. While we still provided strong core support for key community networks and nonprofit intermediaries, the foundation started to put much more effort into building government capacity during the next dozen years. For example, guided by DLNR leadership, we established new positions in DAR and DoCare, including a Mackay Watch coordinator and a community-based subsistence fishing area planner. This helped develop the state government's ability to learn how to listen to communities and speak the language of communities and work with them. Eric also made sure not to waste an opportunity. For example, when the World Conservation Conference came to Hawaii in 2016 with 10,000 delegates from nearly 200 countries, he helped DLNR bring a powerful new idea for Governor Ige to announce to the world at this conference, a commitment that by 2030, 30% of Hawaii's nearshore waters would be effectively managed. At the time, barely 5% of our waters met this standard. This set a big, measurable goal. Eric quickly convened a set of scientists to design a set of place-based data sets and maps, as you can see here, showing our progress towards this 2030 goal by using 7 biological measures to determine reef health for every moku, or region, on each main island. The work of this scientific team, called HIMARC, still serves as a useful decision-making and accountability tool for the state. One of the biggest boosts to enforcement capacity in the state was to create a standalone training academy for DoCare. At the request of the DLNR chair, the foundation fully funded the academy's design and initial rollout. This has provided a great way to fill DoCare's ranks, not just with retired police officers, but with young Aloha Aina people who have been fishing and hunting all their life and simply need the technical training to serve as enforcement officers. To date, 3 cohorts have graduated 59 new DoCare officers, which has nearly filled all of the agency's openings. And a 3rd cohort of 26 recruits will enter the academy this June. 12 of them will fill newly approved positions for a dedicated Marine patrol. The most recent years have been a period of harvesting gains and facing setbacks. After only 1 state approval in 2015 of a community-driven marine managed area designation, Haena on Kauai, 3 more have now been approved, Ka'upulehu and Miloli'i on Hawaii Island and Kipahulu on Maui. And they really are showing results in the water. For example, 4 years after the 10-year tri-weight reserve was created at Ka'upulehu, total fish biomass increased by 173% inside the reserve and by 73% outside the no-take reserve, which makes fishers happy because the fish are being protected in the reserve and then they swim out. Clearly, this is a win-win for everyone. And we're seeing similarly good results in Haena. And you know you're headed in the right direction if politicians start wanting to directly share in the celebration of these co-management approvals. Here is Governor and Mrs. Ige in Miloli'i making an announcement of one of the designations. And frankly, in all 4 of these state designations of community-based management, the Harold Castle Foundation indirectly helped by providing technical assistance for marine monitoring, management plan drafting, community outreach, and moral support and advocacy by the KUA networks of community longtime fishing families. Yet, we also suffered a major setback in early 2023 when the DLNR chair, bowing to political pressure, retreated from the 30% by 2030 goal that was set by Hawaii's governor in 2016. So looking back on these 20 years, what's better? A number of things. First off, as this map shows, there is now a strong set of community networks coordinated by KUA, where longtime fishing families are not just at the table now with government, but actually setting the table. And they're also transcending the fisher versus conservationist tensions by reclaiming the moral power of generational knowledge and traditional natural resource practice. Second, on the left, you can see some of the logos. We've had a big hand in building a healthy ecosystem of intermediary organizations that provide this technical, scientific, planning, and convening support for this work. Third, DAR and DoCare are more aligned with a community co-management approach, and they're better able to enforce the rules. Fourth, thank goodness, the Harold Castle Foundation is no longer the only major oceans funder in town. Through seed funding by us of $3 million, the Hawaii Community Foundation's Holomua Marine Fund has grown into a $14.3 million fund from 14 different funders to be used to help the state of Hawaii achieve its marine management goals. Okay, that's what's better, but what's about the same as when we started 20 years ago? Well, DLNR is still sorely underfunded. Despite our grantees' efforts to get approval for a green fee that allows us to have tourists to help cover our natural resource costs in the same way that it happens in places like Palau and New Zealand, we have failed to get much done to create new financing streams to cover the estimated $358 million annual gap in conservation finance for Hawaii that you see in this slide. We haven't moved the needle much on the percent of nearshore waters effectively managed either. It was about 3% when we started in 2003, and it's only about 6.2% statewide today. Most importantly, trust between fishers and the state, and between some fishers and many of our grantees and us at the foundation, remains weak. This leads to unhelpful battles at the legislature and the Board of Land and Natural Resources that block good policy from getting made. What's worse than when we started 20 years ago? Well, biological health overall is worse, especially in areas of heavy human use with lots of land-based sources of pollution. For example, we've seen alarming drops in percent of nearshore areas covered in coral in West Maui in the past 2 decades. Also, according to the State Department of Health, Hawaii still has 83,000 aging cesspools that discharge over 52 million gallons a day of wastewater, which does severe damage to nearshore ecosystems. But the thing that is much worse than when we started, it's climate change. Hawaii's reefs had no known coral bleaching events before the year 2000. We've had 7 since then. Bleaching occurs when the water is so hot, the corals expel their little colorful symbiotic creatures living inside them called zooxanthellae. If these critters don't come back when the water cools down, the corals die. Climate change also brings with it ocean acidification, increased storm severity, king tides, and increased wildfire threats, all of which damage our reefs. Looking into the future, what might guide us? You know, I'm very proud of the work that our grantees and our staff have done. We've built a field, an ecosystem of effective organizations. We've also changed some of the power dynamics, enjoyed some critical successes, and persevered through failure and setback. But I think we need to do 4 things more, better, and faster. First, as I've mentioned several times, it is critical that we find ways to build trust, to work with a diverse array of fishing leaders and with tourism leaders while still embracing the values held by longtime fishing families as embodied by the KUA network. Second, what got us from 3% to 6% won't get us to 30%. And I'm not talking about 30% no take. I'm talking about 30% well-managed areas that benefit fishers as well as everybody else. But we need a new scaling strategy so Hawaii can reach a critical mass of well-managed nearshore areas. The Maui Hikina Huliamahi initiative shown here is an example of one such strategy. Here, along an entire 50-mile coastline at East Maui, community leaders are working together to develop coherent management. Statewide herbivore rules are another scaling strategy that is underway. Fourth, we still need to build big, durable funding streams for natural resource management. And we need a positive new language for such funding that all sectors of our community can get behind. Maybe instead of calling it a green fee or climate impact fee, can we call it an Aloha Aina fund? And finally, as this beautifully restored ancient He'eia fish pond in this picture surely needs, we must go mauka and do more effective ahupua'a management on the land if we ever want our nearshore areas to have the water quality they need to become highly productive and abundant again. This will require a new watershed-wide, place-based governance model, actually an ancient governance model that worked so well under the Konahiki system for so many centuries in our islands. Is it easy to achieve? No. Is it worth trying though? Well, that's what foundations are for, to de-risk innovation so that we can try new solutions to long-standing problems. I would suggest that we look for additional land-based investments beyond the ones that the foundation already funds, where number one, a solution set exists. Number two, a set of potential grantees exist, not just to plan, but to dramatically and measurably reduce land-based threats to the reefs. And number three, where policy barriers are low. Just for the sake of transparency, I thought I'd do one money slide for you, showing you some of our major grantees and the amounts of funding we've committed since 2003. Now, over the entire history of the Harold Castle Foundation, we've made 206 oceans-related grants totaling $31.5 million nearly to 64 different organizations. So should we keep investing in efforts to restore our nearshore fisheries despite the complexity of threats to our reefs and our limited dollars in relation to the size of the problem? I say absolutely yes. Ultimately, the Harold Castle Foundation has always kept the children and youth of Hawaii foremost in our minds and hearts. And I think we owe it to this next generation to keep working to heal our nearshore areas, just as these preschools are doing in replanting limu under the watchful eye of their kupuna expert, Uncle Wally Ito of Kua and the White Hat. You know, foundations like to have metrics to measure their impact. I would say our ultimate measure of success will be whether these kids, when they become grandfathers, will have reefs healthy enough for them to teach their grandchildren to fish. After all, these keiki are the generation that will set the sail plan, unfurl the sails, and steer Hawaii towards a future that honors its past and restores abundance and balance to our islands. Ekolu Lindsay of Maui, an important community leader there, first taught me this olelo no eau that has been a guide to me and the foundation over the 2 decades of our ocean work. Kava mamua, kava mahope. The future is found in the past. Thank you for listening to this review of our work and to our leaders on the board and the staff, and especially to our grantee partners. Mahalo for your vision, your persistence, and for your love of Hawaii. Aloha.